There's a lot of birds that calling out in the woods around me. On this path I'm walking, it's so green everywhere. And there's marked trees with different paths you can take. Here's called Norwegian Tourists Union. They're marked all this coast path. I think everywhere in Norway it's It's very accessible for people, and as Norwegians we have always traveled or walked in nature. And I'm not sure why I had this impulse to record this right now, but I think probably it's just a need for expression and to maybe just see what will develop in this. I have no idea what I'm gonna talk about or how it's gonna express, but I just felt this impulse. Partly I think it was inspired by listening to the latest talk with from John Verveke, and talking about the quest for a spiritual home, what that looks like, different paths to take, and I liked the way he framed it as a quest for a spiritual home that I think so many people in the world right now is kind of looking for a spiritual home, and many traditions offer that. Different traditions like Christianity or Buddhism or whatever the flavor is, it's these are also, of course, centuries old traditions. And like historically, it's more at stake now in the trajectory of the world at large. It's a lot of things are starting to crumble, like the advent of AI is going to impact us tremendously. People are saying different things, but it's no doubt that it's gonna impact how we are being in the world, and so many people are gonna lose their jobs and all this, and what are people gonna do then, and a lot of questions around this. Was predicted to as the same impact when electricity was discovered by, I think it was Newton. I don't remember exactly, but AI is gonna change the world, and it's already doing that. So I think it makes perfect sense why people are looking for to both make sense of what's the rapid changing and technology, but also the opportunity to seek community and to have a much needed foundation. So in order to orient ourselves into a belonging and togetherness and shared realities, we have that opportunity now, especially with the internet, and of course that's also an historical thing. That's I guess it's all depends on what you're consuming of content. So I think for me, I'm quite influenced by Reiki and all these people who are in what they call a little corner of the internet, is trying to speak about and doing it in a brilliant way, and being informed by all traditions like Neoplatonism and Socrates and Plato and these giant thinkers in the Western society, but also drawing upon especially Buddhism and the Zen tradition. And Taoism has been a long ancient traditions that has never been so much needed. I guess in a way it's always been a way to have that community and to balance between and all the health benefits and so on. But there's a growing sense of neededness, or a needed sense of this coming together and dialogue and reorient towards dialoguing and not in an adversarial way, but in a as Rebecca calls inventio fashion, more like let's see where we can take this notion or this idea, and maybe, for example, a virtue can speak to us and impact us in a deep way, so we can get out of self-deception and so we can participate in a proper way, and so we can have this sense of ever-growing fittedness to the world and to each other, and so we can discover more reality and the sense of moreness that can happen when you have an open and an openness and being curious, really deeply, genuinely curious about the other person and the world, that so we can have this sense of belongingness and all the excitement that can come with a new insight. Maybe a new frame can help us to discover what has always been, that we have kind of sensed in a way, but when the shift is from a deep background in my consciousness or my being, and suddenly jumps forward, and the insight is with this has this emergent qualities. I'm gonna turn back. Actually, this is very not what I wanted. I'm gonna go back into the woods now. It's very noisy. I want the peacefulness of the path I was going. I guess sometimes you have to turn back and recognize that you're heading in a way that you didn't want. But I think I lost my track of where I was going. Where was I? Both in both senses. My thinking got lost in so did my walking. So let's see where I was talking about. Yeah, there's it. There's emergent quality, the insight, experience of meaning can also be a nice framing. The experience of meaning when you have these emergent qualities of an insight, like you've always been walking in the, how is the saying that I really love this, it's been used so many times, but I think it's so telling about also the like on many levels, but these two young fishes that I'm gonna name. The two young fishes as I'm not gonna give them a name, but they're swimming in the ocean like fish usually does. And they see that an old fish is coming towards them, and he looks at them and had this question. So hi guys, how's the water today? Passing the two young fishes, and they look at each other, the two young ones, and they say, they look at each other and what the hell is water? Yeah. It's, I can totally picture it, and that's like we're always, as humans, this is more traffic, we're always swimming in a certain kind of water, and we don't always recognize what's going on, or what we have always been, because it tends to be the closest thing in how we relate to the...
21:59.
It's very loud. Yeah, so a sense of reality, and we're always swimming in our own water, so to speak. And if that water is kind of, I'm not sure if I'm gonna go on with this analogy, but I was talking about quality of insight and recognition, and recognizing that, yeah, I was actually not aware of that, whatever was going on in my background, that I always have had a glimpse of, but not have a full relationship to that thing that has been bothering me, or question I've been walking with my whole life. And when you suddenly get this insight, I have gotten so many insights over the past few years, practicing circling and dialogos, and also beautiful practice of internal IFS and focusing. This practice has been deeply valuable for me, and for a growing number of people around the world. And these communities are kind of affording people to really come to terms with so many things in their lives and their upbringings. And if we can do that together, as is happening, it is happening, and it's more and more people are getting involved with this, and also newer forms of practices, and what's also called or referred to as psychotechnologies. And when you're doing this work and you kind of can sense the aliveness of different practices, and cultivate receptivity for the world, and being shaped by this, and I see it as almost inevitable. Of course, we can all lose track from time to time, or lose our way, or lose our path, so to speak, if you're into this kind of things. But I think it's almost inevitable as you get more and more conscious that there's some sense of a calling that you can hear, some in a deeper sense of attunement, if you want, to something more like a communal aspect of, we'll start as belonging and being oriented towards together with others. And I think one other part of the inevitableness of going in a certain trajectory and reading philosophy, and you get this, at least for me, it's very apparent for me that I'm being drawn towards I don't know like exactly what it will look like. The communal aspect, but I have a sense of it, like that's kind of calling, and nature for me is a part of it, but also a community that is oriented towards what I'm trying to talk about. But I didn't get to the part, the part of the other part of the inevitableness of the increasing conscious way of being in the world. I think also it comes with a inevitable sense that you have some responsibility that you can take on. It's possible to be a part of this and taking responsibility and contributing to this transition that we're in our culture, and was often referred to as the meta crisis. That's how we can sustain life actually on our planet, so we can pass it on and to the next generation. And it's so easy to get comfortable in our Western society where everything is available always, just with a couple of clicks. Yeah, this Norwegian philosopher called Arne Johan Vettelsen. I remember this is a little like, I'm not sure where I'm going, but this culture consumption and stuff, and how we're depleting resources. It speaks to that. The Norwegian philosopher I was really deeply impacted by was actually going to it's not called a high school, it's called a university. I was studying to leadership and coaching. And of course they have a great bookstore in the university campus, and this book was just lying there and calling out, like, very telling about the colors was picked out on this book. It was a black book with big letters, yellow letters, and the title was Pain. And being quote tortured soul, interested in my own pain, I picked up this book and started reading, and he laid out what was to become a deep orientation and reorientation to what I've been, back to the fish in the water that I had a sense of, but I haven't like, not very consciously, but I've always been a keen observer and somewhat interested in politics, and of course on the left side, this goes without saying almost, I feel like. But starting to read this book and how he's building on this notion of pain, and how what he call the transport of pain, and developing this. And I remember being especially struck by when, especially in Norway, or in a lot of, maybe the whole Western culture, has been, it's not long ago that classes, like the work class and the management class and the different kind of classes in society, was a place to belong. And now in the more recent times, we are so individualized, and that creates a certain shift in how deeply individualized we are. So we remember how also the let's see, just gonna go past this crowd. The whole society has been deeply transformed from being belong to a certain class, and talking about the problem of being in a different class or different classes, from that point to our highly individualized culture that we're living in now. The underlying here, emotionally and psychologically, is, as he's saying explicitly in the book, that's really struck me. There's a sense of, if you don't make it here in a Western, you have so many opportunities to succeed So if you don't make it in this society, it's your fault. And the sense of shame that's connected to, yeah, you have all this opportunity, you can pick and choose, and if you don't succeed, then you're a fucking failure. Yeah, this just saying that, stating that, like, gives me not a good kind of goosebumps, like the more like horrible ones, or the, oh shit, this is serious shit. At least not long ago, a couple of decades, maybe, you had a sense of belonging to your class, if there was a working class or the lower middle class or whatever class you will name your, like, being. You could share about it. You could share, and you can get a sense of relief of just sharing and talking trash about, if you wanted to have some shared reality about your horrible whatever. So you didn't have to carry all the burdens by yourself, as we often tend to do in this horrible, beautiful, amazing, fucked up currently culture that we find ourselves in now. So after reading that book, that Arne Johan Vetlesen, I was deeply inspired, and I was doing photography at the time, and suddenly I saw how this reorientation for me through philosophy afforded my interest in photography and became art. It's strange how things can impact you, but I wasn't trying to make art, but at some point this was so influenced by this revealing of the culture I was, or this water I was swimming in, that I didn't have words for, and suddenly, like, these words just had a huge inspiring and also clarifying effect on me, and I could like being inspired by this. I saw that my photography, and I had this, I have to portray this in some way. So I started to make like installations and photographing them. It was a very rich and exciting time. And what I call this all started like with I made an object, and that I also was still very proud of, and quite a unique way to display photographies with woodworks and frames and stuff. But point here is what I call there's many threads here to follow. I can see them lining up in front of me. It's many paths to follow here at this point. Thankfully, my walking is just doing its thing for me, so I don't have to pay much attention to where I'm going. I'm just following this path. Yeah, where do I want to go with this? Kind of tempted to go into my autobiography, of course, getting drawn into this horrible notion of narcissism. It was yeah. All right. I think I'm gonna go back to the impact of reading philosophy. Contemporary philosophy, people will say, why are you reading contemporary philosophy? Why do you don't read Plato and Aristotle and all this classic? And I was like, no, I think I said something like, or I guess I had a sense, it wasn't very explicit, but it was something that struck me about how accurate this guy Arne Johan was with his statement about transitioning of pain, or the transport, as he said, of pain, and how crucial that was to be a healthy individual, and also framing it in a larger cultural context of like, yeah, as I was talking about earlier, the lack of a shared reality in this highly individualized society. Actually, here in Norway it's very prevalent. I saw this study some years ago that regarding individualism itself, we in Norway is just behind Sweden. Sweden is topping the individualizing score. And if you look at the study, some years ago I saw this, maybe 10 years ago, something. Of course, this is escalated immensely. And all the statistics that, this shame of not succeeding and being a failure and not being able to share it, people end up in so many tragic ways, and with depression and anxiety and suicide and all this shit. That's kind of what the effect of the lack of shared reality can look like. Yeah, and now 15, I think it's about, no, it's not 15, maybe, 10, I think it's about 10 years ago. Today I found myself reading philosophy and having practices and blah blah blah, all this thing I was talking about earlier. I'm immersing myself and continuously being inspired by philosophy and how that affords me a certain kind of flexible framing that I can relate to my earlier creative expression in the arts. framing as a continually. But at that time I was totally disembodied, and I was trying to express something, but it usually was, most of the time it was from my overly intellectualized mind at the time, very disembodied. Tyranny of the propositions at that time I didn't know about. I guess I had a deep sense of missing something, but I didn't know about all these practices of meditation, yoga, and blah blah blah. And so now, after 10 years time or so, I've done a lot of work in different contexts, and it's I'm gonna stop here and just slow down. And just let my being absorbed by the wind and the colors and the sense of grounding. And a little pond over there. It's a very visceral sense that I'm actually here, and I can appreciate whatever I'm appreciating, both like visually and also internally. And I think I'm gonna stop here. I've been talking for quite a while. I feel it was good to report myself, and trying to also make some coherent sense of where my trajectory has been, and also where I'm at right now. Yeah, and the artwork I made years ago, I found a name to it, and the thing I made physically, and I called it a moodbox. It had 8 different, maybe we can picture it, 8 different similar frames with different photographies in all of them, and it had a lot of space inside, and it had a light bulb, so when you turn it on, all the photographs was lit up, and the proper name for what it created was a certain kind of mood, and it was a box, so it made sense for me that a mood box was the right one, the right framing for my frames, and that also symbolize what my felt sense of at times is very spacious, lit up, and it shines outward when it's turned on, and feel very grateful for the sense of coherence I can see that in the name, and what it symbolized for me in my felt sense of experience is what my being was trying to get at by creating this piece of art. And so good to know that I was always on the right track on a level. I was always on the right track. My being was much more intelligent than I was as a person, and in that is a deep sense of trust that whatever we are going through and how it looks like, there's a deeper intelligence at work that we can more and more, as we experience it, rely on and trust that things can actually fall in its right places. Getting a little emotional, but in a good way. Being grateful for being, and also I don't know where the future will take me or where I find myself, but so I aspire to really commune with people who are on that prioritize spirituality as a way of making sense of being in the world. If you have listened to this all the way through, I salute you, and I smile at you and thank you for all your attention, and thank myself for taking my need for self-expression and gathering seriously. I really needed this. So I wish you a great day, and a great summer.